So if you ever run into this problem where you've got songs that are sitting in folders unfinished, if you've got scripts that are sitting around, or you've got a bunch of things labeled draft, chances are you are a creative. If you're anything like me, and if you're anything like all the creators in the world, you know that finishing creative projects is one of the hardest things to do. So today what I want to do is I want to go over 5 things that I believe stop us from finishing creative projects. And then I just want to give you solutions, really practical solutions that I've used to help me finish the work that I want to finish. And hopefully this will just go beyond like a pep talk of me saying, oh, you better finish your work, and that you'll have real practical tools you can use to actually get stuff done. All right, the first one's a really common one, and that is perfectionism. And I think a lot of people talk about being a perfectionist like it's some kind of badge of honor. You know, like they'll walk in a room and say, oh, I'm just such a perfectionist. So that means my work is spotless and it's always perfect. The thing about perfectionism, though, is that perfectionists don't exist because perfection doesn't exist. And the quicker you can sort of get around the idea that actually nothing is perfect, the more you'll be able to create. Because studies have actually shown that perfectionists actually don't complete anything. They think that everything is not perfect, so they never put anything out. Whereas people who strive for excellence rather than perfectionism put out more stuff, because they're not thinking about whether something is perfect or not. They're just thinking about whether something is excellent and whether they've done their best. Something that really helps me, and something that I would suggest to anyone who is struggling to put stuff out because they're a perfectionist, is to actually put the thing out anyway. A really good example of me doing this is my YouTube channel, right? So my YouTube channel, some of the earlier videos I put out, not because I thought they were perfect, but because I thought they were good enough for what I could do at the time. And when I look back at some of those old videos now, I realized, yeah, like they're not that good. And even now, some of like the videos I put out now aren't perfect. Like there's a lot of ways I could actually make them better. But as long as I can tell myself that I did my best and I was as excellent as I could be at that point, that's enough for me to post it. And what you'll find is that the more that you actually put it out there, the more quote unquote perfect it becomes. Because then you realize putting it out there is what actually makes you better at the thing that you're trying to do. So regardless of what your creative outlet is, whether it's making videos or whether it's making music, I would challenge you, find the platform that works for your medium and just try and post the thing that you've been working on. And instead of asking, is it perfect? Just ask, is it excellent? Did I put my best effort into it? And if the answer is yes, just post it. And then you'll realize that after 10 posts or after 10 releases, you'll realize that, hey, actually, the 10th release is way better than the first release. And none of it is perfect. And that's completely fine. So everyone's fine. So now it's probably a good time to address the second elephant in the room, with the one that's really linked to perfectionism, and that is the fear of judgment. So let me tell you a quick story. When I was a young kid, I used to be part of my church band, and I used to play guitar in my church band. And there was one weekend I could recall that I didn't play very well. I made a lot of mistakes, and it felt like my guitar sounded bad. I couldn't hear anything on the stage. I just felt like I put in a poor performance, right? What does someone who has low self-esteem and high anxiety about their performance do when they're worried about their performance, or they're worried that someone's going to judge them for their performance? What they do, I'll tell you what they do. So after that service, I go outside and I start making conversation in the hallway, like as you do at church, right? And I remember meeting these new people, and I was trying to figure out who they were and like whether it was their first time at church. And then they said something to me that was really illuminating, which I'll never forget. And they said, oh, so what do you do here? And I was totally thinking like, oh, did they just not realize that I was on stage for like the past 30 minutes? And I said, oh yeah, I play guitar. I didn't want to say that I played badly that day, and then when they heard that I played the guitar, they said, did you play today? I'm like, you didn't even notice that I was up there? And then they were like, I think they probably laughed it off as if like they didn't just deny my existence. The point I'm trying to make is that I was so worried that people were super locked on my mistakes, when in actual fact, some people didn't even realize that I was up there. What's the point of being scared of judgment when a lot of times the only person that's judging you is yourself? So just remember, no one cares. No one cares at all. I say this nicely. All right, the third one, probably also linked to the first two, but the third one is this thing we call shiny object syndrome. And that's when you constantly chase new ideas and new things to try, And because you are so excited about the new thing, or the new shiny object rather, you forget to finish the last thing that you were doing. For this one, I want to say I actually learned a lot from my 9-to-5 job. Where I work, we talk about these things called MVPs. MVP stands for minimum viable. MVP stands for minimum viable product. And basically, a minimum viable product is a minimum version of whatever thing that you're working on, whether you're working on. So say, for example, if you work in like a tech company, a minimum viable product would be like the first version of an app. So that first version of the app might not be perfect, because remember, nothing is. Minimum viable products don't actually encompass every single thing you could possibly do, i.e. they don't encompass all the shiny objects in the world, but basically they are good enough and they are excellent enough to put out to the world for people to use. So I kind of applied the same process with my own creativity as well. If I'm in the middle of a new music project or a new song, and in the midst of that I find something new to try, I'll try and finish off the first project like a minimally viable project. And the moment that it is good enough to release, I'll put that out. And then for the next thing, I tried a new shiny thing. And that's also just linked to the whole perfectionism and excellence kind of thing that I was talking about before. I'm going to be as excellent as I can with everything that I'm doing now. And then for the future, I'm going to think about ways to improve it. And that could encompass the shiny object. Another thing you could do is to apply what we call the rule of 3. So that means you only work on 3 projects at a time. You could even make it a rule of 2, like the whole Sith Lord thing. But basically a rule like that helps you limit the amount of stuff that you're doing, so that you don't get too bogged down with too many ideas at once. So try those out, and I promise you that your projects will be minimally viable. Now, the fourth one is actually lack of structure. I think we have this idea that creative people are somehow disorganized. There's that whole cliche about creative people having paint all over the wall, and like all their stuff is not organized and they don't know what folders are. The thing is though, like when you are messy, and I'm not going to deny that that's for some people that might be part of the process, but the thing is when you have a lack of structure and there's no organization or workflow in your process, you can very easily get overwhelmed. And oftentimes as well, when you don't have a system, all the time you spend trying to sort stuff out, it's actually wasting time. So if you are a busy person and you only have 2 hours a day or even 1 hour a day to work on creative things, then all the time you spend trying to sort through things that should be organized, it's just going to take away time, the precious time that you've got to create. So for me, as a music creative and someone who posts videos on YouTube, the folders that I use to store all my footage and my audio look the same for every single video that I put out. So there'll be a folder for all the assets meaning footage, raw footage that I record from my camera. There's a folder for my Logic files. So Logic is the music workstation I use on my computer. And then I have a folder for rendered footage, of stuff that is already edited and rendered out for posting on YouTube. All the folders are also named with the date that I filmed or recorded the video. The reason why I use a date is because a specific date only happens once ever. That is a unique number that is consistent to that date for that video. And so I never lose track of it. I can always find it. I can always think back at it and go, oh yeah, what's that video I filmed on the 13th of February? Oh yeah, that's right, it was that video, and I can look for it in my backup. Figuring out what you have to do consistently every single time gets better when you post. So if you get over your fear of judgment and you get over your perfectionism, the more and more you do it, the more and more you realize life repeats itself. And so you can figure out structure and process around that. And that's going to help you finish stuff quicker, because you're not going to waste so much time. All right, the last one is a silent killer, but it's very important to realize that it kills your creativity, and that is burnout. As much as we like to think that we can create 24/7, the reality is that we cannot, because we are human and we run out of energy. And sometimes when you're excited about something, and you want to create something, you end up doing it so much that you burn out. Now, one thing that I've realized from a lot of experimentation and a lot of experiences is that I've realized that creativity and doing creative stuff, although it's fun, it's not recuperation, it's not recovery. And just like anything that you do, whether it's a 9-to-5 job or whether it's like cleaning around the house or whether it's looking after kids, though certain things take energy, certain things expend your energy, and certain things rejuvenate you. And things that rejuvenate you aren't necessarily things that you quote unquote enjoy. Sometimes it is just taking a nap. And taking a nap is not something that you would necessarily think it's fun or it's creative, but it's something that you've got to do in order to get back to the fun stuff, which is making stuff and doing creative stuff. So like the previous step about process and structure, it's just as important to structure your days and your rhythm. So make sure you find time to rest and to recuperate. Make sure you make time for rest and don't forget other parts of your life like eating and sleeping, and generally just being like a regular person. Yeah. So which one of these struggles do you relate to the most? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear them. But otherwise, if you enjoyed yourself, see you later. I'm gonna finish this video now because that's what we do here. All right, catch you. Bye.